Hello, I'm Michael Whitebrow, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about UI views and storyboards. So UI view is the base class of every visual element within iOS. So whenever you're looking at an interface on a screen, it's made up of UI views. A button is a UI view, a text field is a UI view. In fact, the screen itself is a UI view. Just a UI view that contains other views as subviews. So there's a hierarchy of UI views that you see on the screen at any particular time. So we create and design our UI and our views using storyboards, and typically our collections of views are managed by a UI view controller. So let's talk about UI view controller for a minute. Whenever we want to control a view, we write a corresponding view controller class. And this will be a subclass of UI view controller or one of its subclasses, which we'll talk about in a moment. So UI view controller provides us many of the methods that we can override to allow us to perform our own actions at certain times during interaction with the user. So for a simple view controller, that's just an empty view that handles an empty view. That might just be lifecycle methods that tell you when it's about to be displayed on the screen, when it will disappear from the screen, that sort of thing. If it's a specialized view controller, like a UI table view controller that we said we'll talk about in more detail later, then it might be one that allows you to respond when the user taps on a particular cell. When we create a view in our storyboard, we must specify the corresponding UI view controller that will manage that view. And this is done via a custom class property in Interface Builder. Additional documentation is available at the Apple developer website. So if you tap on this, we'll see the page for UI view controller. It gives you an overview of the sort of role of a view controller. It talks about subclassing, and has a whole programming guide here for view controllers. It talks about view management, which is how things get loaded, or how view controllers and their views get loaded. It talks about these lifecycle methods, view-related notifications, for things like when it will appear or disappear from the screen, and the corresponding methods that will get called. It talks about how to handle rotation of views, and you can also have sub-view controllers, so it talks about that process as well, which we will talk about as well later in the unit. And then you can find, for example, its top-level view property, and then there's a number of useful methods and properties here that you can use, things like handling layout and margins and offsets. So throughout the semester, we're going to create many different variants of UI view controller. So you'll get lots of practice and experience writing this. We're going to use some more specialized base classes as well as UI view controller. We'll use UI table view controller or UI collection view controller, and in fact, a number of other ones as well. So we said that we create our views and the overall navigation of the app via storyboards. So Xcode has a visual editor. It's called Interface Builder, and it allows us to create interfaces. We used it already. That was where you dragged and dropped interface elements onto a canvas. Prior to iOS 5, so we're talking many years ago, all of the interfaces were created one screen at a time, still via an earlier version of Interface Builder, but the interfaces were specified and stored in nib files, and they weren't really visually connected in any way. So the benefit of storyboards is we get to see a visual arrangement that corresponds to the navigation of the app. From iOS 5 onwards, we've had storyboards, and not only are we designing the views, but we have arrows linking them, and you get to see the transitions. So it's much more like a storyboard that someone would create for a movie or an app to describe what the navigation would look like. So you get to see the design as well as the way they interact with each other. And we can still use nib files for individual views if we want. So storyboards are a powerful visual way of designing and specifying the navigation. We're going to mostly use those throughout the unit. It is worth saying that for the last couple of years, Apple has been pushing a declarative way of specifying interfaces via what they call Swift UI, which is a way of writing interfaces in code, but with a visual representation of them shown live on the screen. So this is quite a different way. We're not fully adopting it within the unit because it still has quite a few limitations, but we will cover it later in the unit. Even though it's not our recommended way of writing interfaces, it's still worthy of discussion. Okay, thank you for watching.